Hi everybody, I hope this video finds you well. In today's video, I will be introducing our class, Math 150H, and going over the syllabus for our course. Let me start by saying a little bit about the structure of our class. Our class will be taught in what is called an asynchronous manner. This means that there will be no mandatory meeting times during the semester, and all content will be delivered to you through lecture videos on YouTube. We will also be making a lot of use of our Canvas page. On Canvas, you will find all the files you need for our class, announcements, discussion boards, and your grades. You will also be submitting all assignments via Canvas. So, what is Math 150 all about? Well, what this class is a survey course introducing statistics and probability. That means that during the next 16 weeks, we are going to be covering a wide range of topics, from sampling theory to descriptive statistics to inferential statistics and data modeling. Our course won't go super deep into any one area, but instead try to sort of provide you with a framework that will be useful in future classes or other disciplines. This class is truly one of the most directly and immediately usable courses you can take. So I'm really excited about working the next 16 weeks with all of you in statistics. Now, with that said, let's go ahead and actually start talking about our syllabus proper, going over some of the policies and expectations for our course. The first thing I'd like to say is, as you can see here, my name is Ben Mitchell, and I will be your instructor for the next 16 weeks for this course. Let's talk a little bit about some of the contact methods of contact for this course. First of all, I'd like to call your attention to the top here of the syllabus, where we have our office hours that will be held via Zoom each week. For your guys' course, those hours will be from Monday from 2 to 3 p.m., Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., and on Thursday from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. These 3 times will happen each week. This will be our sort of regular schedule. Sometimes near exams, we might have an extra office hour as well, but we will always have these 3 hours each week for you to hop on and ask any questions you might have in sort of as in-person a manner as we are able to. Each morning on the day of one of these office hours, you guys will receive an email reminding you that that office hour is coming up, and also will receive an email with the link to that Zoom meeting. These office hours, just like any other sort of office hour, is optional, but I do think it's a really great opportunity to come on and ask any sort of questions you have in person so that we can actually have a live discussion. We'll talk about some other communication routes a little bit later as we discuss this syllabus, but I really do want to call your attention to those office hours just so you know when those times will be. You also notice that there's some prerequisite information here. To be honest, as you start to see in this course and at the introduction, Math 150, even though it is a mathematics course, it really does focus on statistics, which is really its own science. We won't really need that many things from previous math courses. There's a few moments of some very, very basic algebra. There's lots of working with percentages, fractions, and decimals. But aside from that, if it's been a little while since you've taken another math course, you won't have too much to really worry about as long as you can solve some simple linear equations and feel comfortable working with percentages, decimals, and fractions. Everything else you'll need to know will be presented to you in this course. There's also a large description of our class right here, which we're not going to spend too much time talking about right now, since maybe a lot of it won't make a lot of sense. But actually, in our introductory sort of video, some motivating examples will actually sort of talk about how all of these sort of pieces relate to this overall discipline of statistics and really give you a framework for how we'll be approaching the course. What I do want to call your attention to on this first page of our syllabus are the sort of required materials for our class. So right down here. First of all, textbook. Our class is sort of unique in that you do not need to purchase a textbook for our class. Instead, you guys will be getting a full set of course notes that are written by me that will be posted and periodically updated on our Canvas page. This replaces a textbook, so you do not need to purchase a textbook. All the course notes will be just provided to you directly. You also get the benefit that the course notes are written by me, so they're written in the same style as the lecture videos, as the practice exercises, as the quiz and exam questions. So all of that is written in the sort of same style and tone. If you've looked at the El Camino bookstore, you might have seen mention of this other textbook, Moore's The Basic Practice of Statistics. If you really want an additional reference, you can pick up that textbook, but it's certainly not necessary for our class. What is necessary for our class is a calculator. You've probably already received an email from me discussing the calculator. You absolutely must have a calculator capable of statistical testing. I highly recommend the TI-84 Plus model or above. That means like TI-87, 89. I believe there's ones called like Titanium. Anything that's 84 or beyond will work for this course. Do you have to have a TI calculator? No, you don't have to have a TI, a Texas Instruments, specifically, but do keep in mind that in like the lecture videos, the calculator demonstrations are done on a TI calculator, so it's much easier to follow along if you have a TI calculator. If you have a different calculator, you're welcome to use it, but it's going to be a little bit more challenging. It'll sort of be on you to figure out how to do the operations that we need on your particular calculator. You're certainly welcome to reach out to me and I'll try to help you as best I can, but just keep in mind that if you want to have the easiest sort of experience, you want to have a TI calculator, specifically 84 or above. If you don't have a calculator for this course and you don't really want to have to go through and purchase a calculator, El Camino does have a calculator loan program. I already sent out prior to this syllabus video being recorded an email with the link to the sort of technology requisition form for El Camino. You can get a calculator for loan, a laptop, a hotspot. Definitely for our class, the main thing there would be a calculator. And if you don't have one, I strongly recommend the calculator loan program as an option for getting that calculator. Other great thing is if you do get a calculator through the calculator loan program, you will be getting a TI-84 Plus. So you'll get exactly the one that I demonstrate on. So to summarize here, very simply, no required textbook, no need to purchase a textbook, but definitely do need to get a calculator, TI-84 or above for our class. It is also essential to get that calculator as soon as possible because we will start using it from the very beginning of our course. Are there any other required materials for our class? Well, not really. Of course, though being an online or remote learning course, you will definitely need to make sure you have a device that is capable for internet access to be checking our Canvas page, to be watching the lecture videos, etc. You'll also need some sort of device able to create PDFs for your solutions. That means you'll either want something like a tablet to create electronic solution documents, or you'll need to get an app for like a smartphone or something to scan handwritten work into a PDF format. If you have any questions about that, on our Canvas page, you can find a document called the Electronic Submissions Guidelines, and that not only tells you how or what the expectations are for electronic submissions in our class, but also gives you a few suggestions for apps or different software that you can use for changing handwritten work into a PDF format. So that's all the sort of major things on this first page. You'll also notice that down here we have this big list of course objectives. Of course, right now, a lot of these things aren't going to make a lot of sense. If you want to, later on in our course, you can of course come back and reference these objectives to make sure you're really learning what you're supposed to be learning. But for now, let's go ahead and move on to page 2. So on page 2, there's again sort of a condensed version of those objectives into what we call student learning outcomes. We'll skip that for now, and instead we'll go ahead and focus on the grading policies. How are you graded in this class? What are you assessed on? What are those expectations? So first of all, in terms of our class, we break your grades into 4 major categories that each have a percentage weight. There will be quizzes in the term that make up 17% of your overall grade, a project in our class that makes up 10% of your overall grade, 3 midterms that total 36%, that's 12% for each one, and a comprehensive final exam that accounts for 37% of your grade. We use a standard grading scale here. This is also a good time to mention that there won't be any extra credit assignments in our class. However, you will find that on each quiz and midterm, there will be extra credit opportunities. So you should not be expecting at the end of the term any extra credit assignment, but you can find extra credit opportunities on pretty much every one of our standard assignments. So let's talk a little bit about what each of these sort of categories means and what you should expect in those. So first, we have quizzes. There will be quizzes due every Tuesday, except those immediately following a midterm. So you're basically expecting a quiz sort of every week that is due on Tuesday. Generally, those quizzes will be posted about 5 or 6 days before it's due, so you'll have some time to sort of work on it and make sure that you're comfortable with it before you need to turn it in. For the quizzes, each student must submit your own work. However, as you're working on it, you're certainly free to discuss the quiz with your classmates. In fact, on Canvas, we'll have discussion boards for each quiz. So if you have questions or you want to have a space to discuss the quiz with your classmates, those discussion boards will do that. You can even ask some basic questions about the quiz to me, and I'll respond on those discussion boards as well. Really, we're not looking at the quizzes as something that's super strict or anything. It's really a check-in to make sure that you're understanding the core concepts each week. Quizzes will be submitted electronically via Canvas. That's true of everything in our class, so everything's submitted electronically via Canvas, and they must be submitted as a single PDF file. Again, that'll all be sort of covered in that electronic submissions guideline that can be found on Canvas. Quizzes will be due by 11:59 p.m. on the day that they are due. Keep in mind that submissions that are late or in an incorrect format can be penalized. This is also an important thing to say here. If you have any questions about how to submit documents in our class, please reach out as soon as possible. I'm more than happy to answer those questions and help you guys make sure that you're submitting things correctly. But of course, if you wait until the very last minute, right when this deadline is coming up, then it's very hard to sort of get a response and actually get the help in time. So definitely be proactive about that. That's sort of our mantra, as you'll hear in the syllabus video, is being proactive about if you ever have any questions about our class, the structure, how to submit things, any of that, always feel free to ask. At the end of the term, your lowest quiz score will be dropped. So while it's very important to work on each of the quizzes and do as well as possible, do keep in mind that by the end of the term, I believe you'll have taken 11 quizzes and your lowest quiz score will be dropped. The second major thing is that we will have a project in this class. This is an honors section of Math 150, so there is a project required for our semester. We're not going to go too in-depth on the project right now. The instructions for the project will be distributed with the assignment. I believe for you guys, the project will be out. The exact date is at the end of the syllabus, but in about week 6 or 7, and then you'll have a good about 6-7 weeks after that to complete it. So you'll have a long period of time to sort of work through that project. What is the sort of point of the project? Well, where the quizzes are sort of a check-in on what we're doing each week, the project is really a chance to apply the statistical concepts that we're learning in our class to a realistic sort of large-scale data set. And this is really, as an honor section, your opportunity to go beyond what we discuss in class and actually see how statistics is done and performed in real life. So really the focus of that project is going to be on the interpretation of the results there. Again, just like a lot of things in our class, it's going to be a good idea once that project is available to get an early start on it, to work on it proactively, so that as you work on it, if you have any questions, you can ask me during the office hours, post on the discussion board, etc. The next major category for assessments or grades is midterms. We have 3 midterms in this class. The midterms will be held on the Fridays of weeks 4, 8, and 12. This basically tells you that we're sort of dividing our class into quarters. We have a 16-week semester, and we're dividing it into 4 quarters of 4 weeks. At the end of each of those quarters is a midterm, or in the case of the last quarter, the final exam. So the midterms are on the Fridays of weeks 4, 8, and 12. Midterms will be made available to you at 9 a.m. and are due by 5 p.m. the same day. So you have an 8-hour window to complete the midterm. Does that mean that the midterm takes 8 hours to complete? Absolutely not. The midterms are written in a style similar to what you would be doing if we were meeting in person, meaning that the midterms are written to be completed in about 2 hours. You have an 8-hour window to complete the exam because I know that you have other responsibilities, other classes, things sort of get in the way. So I'm giving you an 8-hour window, even though the expectation is probably you only need about 2 hours to complete the exam itself. When you're working on the exam, you're allowed access to your notes and our course material. So that means if you want, you can reference your own notes that you've taken, our course notes. You can rewatch the lecture videos, any of that stuff as you work on your midterm. What you're not allowed to do while working on the midterm is discuss it or work on it with any other students in the class. So you have to work on it individually, and certainly cannot discuss it or work on it with any individuals outside of our class. Midterms, just like the quizzes, will be submitted electronically via Canvas, and once again must be submitted as a single PDF file. No makeup exams will be given. That's why I'm letting you know about the dates, Fridays of weeks 4, 8, and 12 already. So you already know about these exams, even though they're like a 1 month, 2 month, 3 months in advance. That's because there's no makeup exams given. If, however, an emergency does crop up and an exam is missed, or one of the exams doesn't go particularly well, then one exam score can be replaced by the final exam if the final exam score is higher. So we're not dropping a midterm or anything like that. We drop a quiz, but we do not drop a midterm. However, we will replace a midterm if the final exam is better than that in terms of score. And once again, submissions that are late or an incorrect format can be penalized. The last category we have is a final exam. The final exam for our class is a comprehensive or cumulative exam, meaning it covers everything from our course. It's held on the very last day of class. You'll notice that all the other midterms are on Fridays, but since the last day of our class is on a Thursday, that would be Thursday, June 10th. The final exam, similar structure to the midterm, but it is a little bit longer. That means it'll be made available at 9 a.m. and will be due by 9 p.m. the same day. Once again, just like the midterms, you're allowed access to your notes or other course materials for when you're working on your final exam. However, you can't discuss the final exam with anyone in the class or anyone outside the class. Final exam will be submitted electronically, just like everything else. Same submission guidelines there. So overall here, we've got sort of 4 categories. You basically have weekly quizzes, though you do get a break the week right after a midterm. You've got this one project that'll sort of be available to you around the midpoint of the semester, and you'll have a good chunk of time to work on it. You have midterms every 4 weeks, sort of at the end of each quarter, or if you prefer, each unit of our class. And then finally, a cumulative or comprehensive final exam at the very end of our term. All right, let's go ahead, since we've talked about assessments and things like that, onto page 3 of our syllabus. So, on page 3, we have some general requirements and important dates. These are some important things about the general structure of our class, as well as some dates that aren't necessarily tied to assignments or assessments, but are sort of important for the overall semester here at El Camino. So, first of all, as already mentioned, we have an asynchronous class here, which means all lecture materials will be presented through videos posted on YouTube. All videos for our class will be found on a playlist named Math 150 Spring 2021 on my YouTube channel. I'll update you guys regularly about what videos have been posted, as well as giving you schedules for what you should watch. Now, of course, these schedules are just a recommendation. You can watch the videos sort of at your own pace, but I do recommend trying to follow the schedules as much as possible so as not to let things sort of pile up, and also just so you're proceeding in the course at a reasonable pace. Associated with the lecture materials and videos are suggested exercises that I've written for your practice, so there'll be chances to sort of engage with the material and try it on your own. It is definitely highly recommended that you do as many of these practice problems as possible to make sure you're comfortable with all the topics and concepts presented in the videos. For additional practice, you also have a set of course notes replacing a standard textbook, as mentioned at the beginning of this syllabus, and that'll be posted to Canvas as well. Those course notes, of course, go back over some of the things that are covered in the videos, but also give you a few more examples that you can either read over or try on your own. Also keep in mind that all documents for our class will be found on our Canvas site, so that's all the practice problems, the course notes, etc. You'll also find like review guides and other supplemental materials there. Remember, Canvas is also going to be used to submit all of your assignments. It'll also be where you can keep track of your grade, and we will also have it be where we get a source of announcements, as well as a place for our discussion boards so that we can have discussions about the material in our class. Also, keep in mind, this has already been mentioned, but it's good to highlight it again. All the assignments for our class are going to be submitted electronically. There's a guidelines for electronic submissions that can be found on Canvas that you should definitely follow. It sort of walks you through how to create a single PDF document of your work. Again, this is definitely something that if you have questions about, feel free to reach out and ask. I'm more than willing to help you guys with making sure that things are getting submitted correctly. But if it gets too close to the deadline and you do submit something that's in an incorrect format, it can receive a penalty. All right, let's talk about maybe one of the most important things. We've already discussed some aspects of this, but let's talk about communication methods in this class. Since our class is completely online, there are 3 major ways to ask questions or get help during our course. The first of these we've already discussed. It's the online office hours. We have 3 hours each week where I'll be available through Zoom. These times are at the top of our syllabus, and remember, you also receive a reminder email each morning of those office hours, reminding you that that office hour is coming up and also giving you the link to that Zoom meeting. The office hours are, of course, optional, but they're a great way to have a live discussion about the topics in our class. Definitely for these, you feel free to hop on and make use of them as you will. They're scheduled for an hour at a time, but that doesn't mean you have to attend for the entire hour. If you just have 1 or 2 quick questions, you can hop on when it's convenient for you, ask them, and then be on your way. If you had an office hour that you weren't able to attend, maybe because you had something else you needed to do, I will always go ahead and post the boards or slides that we cover in that office hour. Like if we work through a problem and I write up some things during the office hours, I'll always post that at the conclusion of office hours to our Canvas page. So even if you're not able to attend every office hour, make sure you go ahead and look at Canvas where you'll see the documents that we basically covered in that office hour posted there. The second major sort of form of communication in our class is that we will have Canvas discussion boards for each set of suggested exercises, for the quizzes, etc. Always feel free to post these discussion boards if you have questions. I really would strongly recommend making use of the discussion boards for any content questions you have during our class for 2 major reasons. The first and probably most important reason is that if you post a question on one of those discussion boards about, one of the exercises, one of the videos, one of the quiz questions, whatever, when you get that question answered, either by myself or by one of your fellow classmates, then not only do you benefit from the response, but all of your classmates benefit because everybody can see that sort of discussion and everybody can sort of see that back and forth and how we sort of reach the sort of correct conclusion there. So it's really beneficial to the entire class. The second thing is that in the Canvas sort of discussion editor, there is a built-in mathematics editor, so it's easier to sort of type out mathematical expressions on the discussion boards than it is to type it out in email. It's certainly possible in email, but it is definitely a little messier, a little bit more of a pain, so it makes it easier on my end if I'm answering content questions on the discussion boards as opposed in emails. Speaking of email, though, that is our third and final sort of direct communication way. You're always feel free to just directly email me at bmitchell@elcamino.edu. Certainly, if you ever have any personal questions, say about grades, about how to approach our class, anything like that, you can always just directly email me. You can certainly email me content questions as well about the topics in our class. Again, I recommend using the discussion boards for that, but it's really your choice. So overall, during the entire semester, you always have these 3 different ways of sort of asking questions, getting help, communicating with me. Even though we're, completely online here, we still want to make sure there's a lot of good back and forth. Online office hours each week, Canvas discussion boards, and direct email. All right, let's talk about some important dates, and these apply to all spring semester classes. First, the last day to drop the course without notation on your permanent record and for a full refund is Sunday, February 28th. That is the Sunday after week 2. So you basically have about 2 weeks to see if this is the right style of class for you. Obviously, everything right now is in a remote learning sort of environment, but of course what is different is that some classes are synchronous and have live lectures, some are asynchronous like ours and have these lecture videos. Definitely take these first couple weeks to make sure that this structure works for you. It is a definitely unique structure and you want to make sure that it's just a good way for you to learn. So you have until Sunday, February 28th to make that sort of decision. If you decide to drop the class before that date, then there won't be any notation. You'll get a full refund. It's like it never even happened. The second sort of deadline here is, of course, the one in Friday, May 14th. That is all the way at the conclusion of week 12, which means by then you guys will have taken like 7 or 8 quizzes. You'll have taken all 3 of your midterms and everything. You'll have a lot of information about how you're sort of performing in the class, and this is your sort of deadline if you're not doing as well as you wanted to. Maybe you want to avoid a failing grade. You can receive a W instead. One thing that's sort of important about both of these drop deadlines is do make sure that since we are a fully online course, that if you do decide you want to drop the class for whatever reason, make sure you go ahead and officially withdraw from the class using my ECC. There's no real way to sort of assume here that you're going to be dropped if you stop attending because, again, we're entirely online. It's asynchronous. There's no way to sort of know if you've stopped attending. So make sure that if you decide to drop the class, you go ahead and drop it on your end. Finally, make sure that you're aware of the announcements that are being issued in our class. It's super important in a class like ours. As I think I've already mentioned, you guys will be getting announcements through Canvas at least twice a week, sort of once at the start of the week, laying out the schedule for that week, and then once again, sort of as a midweek reminder. You'll also get announcements about like upcoming deadlines, due dates for quizzes, or if an exam's coming up, anything like that. So make sure you check your El Camino email on a regular basis. All right, I am not only, of course, being aware of everything that's going on in our class and sort of being proactive about everything is going to be a big step on being successful in this course. So let's talk about a couple other ways to be successful in this with some cornerstones to success. These are pretty general, so they probably apply to almost any class and certainly any mathematics class, but I think I do want to just highlight them anyway because I do think they are important for a class like this. So first of all, keeping up with the material. I think that goes without saying. In an asynchronous structure, it's very easy for things to sort of pile up. That's why I try to give you guys a regular schedule so that you know what you need to be doing so that things can proceed at a reasonable pace. You also want to make sure that you save some time to reread and annotate your own notes and rewatch any lecture videos that you find challenging. Make sure you also take some time to read through those course notes. Yes, the course notes cover the same material as in the lecture videos, but they provide maybe alternate explanations, alternate examples, so they're definitely worth reading through as well. Second sort of major cornerstone is taking good notes. It is definitely true that, for all the quizzes, the midterms, the final, everything, you have access to all the course materials. So, in the middle of a midterm, you can certainly go back and rewatch a lecture video. But, of course, there's only a finite amount of time. It is much easier if you have good, well-organized notes. You have access to your notes for all the assignments and assessments. So if you have good, well-organized notes that sort of lead you to be able to quickly find the information that you need, this entire class will be much easier. Studying adequately before exams by reviewing your notes. You guys get review guides for each exam. You'll definitely want to make sure you work through those review guides thoroughly and ask about anything that is not clear. So that means that once that review guide's up and you've had a chance to work through it, either make use of the Canvas discussion board, ask during office hours, make sure that there's nothing on there that you're unsure about because sort of you're being told ahead of time what might show up on that exam. You want to make sure you've got all your bases covered. And finally, making use of the resources. We have office hours, we have these Canvas discussion boards, the textbook, i.e. meaning the course notes, the other students in the class. All of these are great resources. The most important thing about making use of these resources is being proactive with these resources. The sooner you reach out about a question, the better. Sometimes you'll ask a question and maybe you'll get the answer that explains everything in one go. That's great, but more often than not, you might ask a question, get a response, need to ask a follow-up question or a clarification. By being proactive, not only do you give time for that back and forth, but also you allow yourself to get that information ahead of time before you need to proceed in the class. A lot of the stuff we do in this class sort of builds on one another. I mean, that's mathematics, sort of in mathematics adjacent subjects in general. So it's very important to be proactive, ask about things as soon as possible. All right, let's go ahead and move on to page 4 of the syllabus here. So page 4 just has two small pieces, but both very important: academic honesty and our ADA statement. So for academic honesty, I'm not going to read through this whole thing, but I do want to just remind you guys that for this class, you have access to all your materials. When you're taking your midterms or working on your quizzes, you don't need to worry about, are you allowed to look at your notes? Are you allowed to watch the videos? You're allowed to use any of the resources. The one thing that is very important in terms of academic honesty for our class right here is that because you have access to all your materials, the most important thing, the thing we're looking at in terms of academic honesty, is that the work you turn in is your own. That means any evidence that submitted work comes from an outside source, especially like when methods or approaches that weren't covered in our class are sort of used, can result in failing grades on the assignments. So definitely make sure that you have access to all your resources, make use of those resources, and do sort of the work yourself here. It's very important for me that there's academic honesty in the class, but it's also really important for you guys. As I think I mentioned at the beginning, statistics is an incredibly applicable field. There's things from all over in this course that are useful in your fields that you're going into, your professions, but also just your daily life. And if you approach the class sort of honestly, work hard at it, you're going to gain a lot that I think is tremendously beneficial for you in the future. Speaking of being beneficial and trying to get as much out of the class as possible, if you have any accommodations that you need for the class, please let me know as soon as possible, and I'll make sure that you get those so that everyone can benefit as much as possible from our class. This also sort of speaks to the idea of taking ownership of the class from you guys. If there's things that you'd like extra information about, questions you have, things you'd like to see delivered differently, anything that you think would help you be successful in our class and gain as much as possible from our class, let me know. I'll always try to do my best to make sure that you all sort of have as best of an experience in our class overall. Let's move on to the last page of our syllabus, which just sort of lists some of the important dates. The main thing here is we're not going to go over all these, but I just want you guys to sort of see that we have a pretty strict structure for everything. You'll see all these different quizzes due on the different Tuesdays. You can see the midterm dates all already set, so on and so forth. This is just to be available so that you can plan out, if you have work or other things, other responsibilities, so that you know when things are coming due. It's also just to sort of remind you that this stuff is already preset, right? So there won't be a lot of flexibility about trying to reschedule midterms or things like that. I'm trying to give you this in advance so that you know what to expect during the term. Also, this will be on the front page of your Canvas site, so if you ever need to reference what's coming up, this will all be there. Of course, in those daily schedules, you'll also get reminders about like the next quiz that's due or the next midterm, but this just tells you everything to expect for the entire 16-week course. Overall, that sort of wraps up our syllabus. I'm really excited to work with all of you on this class. Math 150 is one of my favorite classes to teach. It's by far the class that I've taught the most since starting to teach at El Camino. So I'm always really excited about a new semester with a new group of students and everything. I'm really looking forward to a good spring term. Yeah, hopefully this is a good introduction to all of you. And I can't wait to start talking or discussing some things with all of you next week.